Thanks for pressing play. Legends and Losers is sponsored by our good friends at Oracle NetSuite. Check out netsuite.com/legends. Today, what you could think of as a Dadcast. We have three extraordinary dads who are all dads of young men of varying ages. My friend Mike Bloch, my friend Mike Diller, and my friend Ben Rewis. We have a very real conversation about what it takes to be a man, what it takes to be a dad, what it takes to be a husband, how to have a legendary career, how to smash stereotypes, and how to raise boys to become great men. All right. The Ramones said, hey ho, let's go. And Tom Waits said, fishing for a good time starts with throwing in your line. Hello, my legendary friends. I am so glad you decided to join us for this episode of Legends and Losers. Today we have a legendary conversation. And around here, we like to say one legendary conversation can change your life. We try to capture dialogues that matter, hopefully dialogues that you think are worth sharing. And that's what we have today with three extraordinary men, Mike Bloch, John Diller, and Ben Rewis. They're all good friends of mine. They're friends. We're all friends together. We've been on surf trips together. We talk a lot. We like to do stuff together. And interestingly, all three of these fathers are dads to boys. We have a conversation that I think a lot of men and really a lot of people in general are having today, which is how do you be a great dad? How do you be a great husband? How do you raise young men? And my hope is that this conversation is a conversation that's probably one like that you probably had. And my hope is this conversation sparks a lot of thinking and dialogue in your life about men, boys, and fatherhood. Now, our friends at Oracle NetSuite want to help you turbocharge your growth. There's no mistaking the fact that legendary companies are built on legendary foundations, and NetSuite's goal is to be that foundation, that, if you will, platform for growth. It's a complete business system for every part of your business that puts you in control. So you're driving the bus instead of under the bus. You can stay on top of revenue, expenses, your orders, omni-channel e-commerce, and all of that in real time. With NetSuite, for example, if you're selling out of inventory in your warehouse, bam, your website knows. And then your team knows to order more items so that you can replenish that inventory. You gain real-time visibility into all of your operations, where your cash is at, where your customers are at. And NetSuite has a complete set of HR solutions so that you can hire the best people and retain them and grow them and develop them over time. So I'd encourage you to check out netsuite.com/legends. And when you go there, what you'll see is NetSuite is offering Legends and Losers listeners a chance for a free growth review. That is to say, you could spend an hour with an expert in your industry going over what are the opportunities and barriers for growth and how you capitalize on those opportunities and flatten those barriers. So I'd encourage you to check out netsuite.com/legends. All right. My three dear good friends. John Diller is a technology executive and entrepreneur, and he's a husband and a father to two young boys. My dear friend Ben Rewis is a successful technology executive in the financial area, what's called a fintech exec, if you will. He's a husband to an extraordinary woman and a father to a young adult man. And my buddy Mike Bloch is a realtor and entrepreneur in Santa Cruz, California. He's a husband and he's a father to two young boys. And we have a conversation that I think is really worth getting into. I hope it sparks a lot of interesting ideas, thoughts, and most importantly, fires up dialogue in your head and with other people in your life about what it takes to be a man today, and most importantly, a father, and in this case, a father who is raising boys. So here they are, Ben, John, and Mike. So first of all, boys, cheers.
Cheers.
Nice to see you.
Thank you for having us, Christopher.
Hey, man, thanks for coming over. And what's it like being a dad in 2018?
Who wants to start?
You do. You start.
Start from youngest to oldest.
Yeah, there you go.
It's simple. It's the best thing I ever did in my life, and it's the freaking hardest thing I ever did in my life, right? I'm in the thick of it. I got a 2-year-old and a 5-year-old, so I love it.
And you also have a thriving career, Mike.
Yeah, I squeeze that in here once in a while, you know. Yeah,
And you've been known to get the occasional surf in.
you got to do that. You got to do that. Living here in Pleasure Point, a block from the beach. What's the point if you don't get a few surfs in here and there? What kind of role model would that be for my boys to be all work and no play, right?
And so how do you make it all work?
How do we make it all work? I don't know. We were kind of talking about that earlier today, John and I. I guess I've come to the conclusion there's really no such thing as being balanced, but you strive for it. You always try to be as balanced as you can. I'm fully committed to the dad thing because my wife works nights, so she's often sleeping during the day, or she works every other weekend. So I'm up with the boys at 6 a.m. and I spend a few hours with them before she even gets home from work. So whether I like it or not, I happen to like it, but whether I like it or not, like I'm on full Mr. Mom mode. Like
you got the day shift.
Yeah, exactly. Fortunately, we got, babysitters and, well, I hate to even call her a babysitter. She's like straight from heaven. She's the best thing in the world. But, yeah, like I told Alyssa, like my wife, I'm stoked we set it up this way, as I have no choice. Like every other weekend, like it's me, like I'm with the kids all day. And, when she's sleeping or she's at work, like I'm on, and that's exactly where I want to be. But it's nice that I kind of have to be, because I don't really have a choice. So, I think the guys all know what it's like. We get a little distracted here and there, the waves get good, or you got work going on, you got all these things. But, when you got a 1-year-old crying about something, you just, you can't ignore it. You're all in.
And I'm curious, all three of you have really big jobs, really big careers. All three of you are entrepreneurial. Mike, of course, you're an entrepreneur. And so you have these, of course, I'm not a dad. You have these giant jobs. All three of you are in the elite at what you do. And I know what kind of dads all of you are, because I see all of you with your kids all the time, and I hear all the stories and all that. And I don't know how you do that.
First of all, I take exception. You are a dad. You have your dinosaurs. I know that. I see you love and care for them. So I wouldn't say that, Chris. But that's right. Yeah, you're raising kids.
They'll never steal the Mustang and get drunk and wrap it around a lamppost or anything.
And for whatever it's worth, this morning I was talking with Judah, my 2-year-old, who just the day before was playing in the garden with Christopher, and this morning Judah said, "Hey Dad, make sure you eat some carrots. Auntie Chris has some really good carrots." So I guess they got carrots from you in the garden yesterday, and
I hope he calls me Auntie Chris for the rest of my life, and his for that matter. I'll be Auntie Chris all day long.
You can replay this episode in 10 years for him. Yeah. So just to your point of having a career, so I commute over the hill to work, right? And
How long's your commute?
50 miles. So it's a big commute, but I'm blessed. I've got the flexibility to work from home a few days a week. So 2 to 3 days a week I'm there. And it's funny, my boys, they always want to know. They want to know, "Daddy, are you working from home tomorrow?" And I'll tell them, "Yeah, tomorrow I'm going to work from home." And they're like, "Yes!" They're so stoked for me. I'm not sure if it's for me or for them, but I'm there in the morning on those days, and I can hang out with them, spend time, and I'm there when they get home. So they know those days are different, So I think it's finding the balance where you said balance, right? Where you can spend the right amount of focus in your life. Like you've got, compartments that you put them in. And, I do focus on work, and career is important because that provides for us. And, doing a good job there is really important for my family and for my boys. And they see that too, that's an important part. But when I'm with them, it's about being intentional with that time. Those mornings, I love it. I can crawl into bed with them, wake them up. But the mornings where I go, I'm gone before they're awake. right? So it's important to me to make use of that time as best as I can.
So to answer the question about, how do you balance career and being a good dad? I think for me, the first answer is have a great wife. Right? If you have a legendary wife, it's a lot easier to be a legendary dad, right?
Amen.
So props.
If you have a legendary wife, it sets up a legendary life.
Exactly.
I remember when I had this moment with Carrie where it was like, my life's never been better, and she's in it. And those two things aren't a coinky-dink.
Exactly. And then to the question of communication and tech, I think, parenting and partnering, I've always, there's like the classic 3 C's, right? Communication, compromise, and coupling, right? You know that you set yourself up for that. So does tech help that sometimes? But sometimes it's important to ignore it and turn the shit off and just sit with your honey on the couch and watch a movie and be there. And that's not about tech. That's about love. And so I think it's important to understand the difference between the two when it comes to being both a partner and a parent.
Yeah, that's interesting. There's definitely a dichotomy there where it can enable you to be productive, but can get in the way of family time. And especially I see this with my kids. When they're young, they don't have impulse control, right? And they want to be on the iPad, and they see it from you too. Like they see how easy you get distracted by your phone, and something's going on and you get pulled away, like you were saying, Mike. And that's a big struggle for us, where we introduce tech to our kids, got them iPads with good intentions of, hey, let's get some educational games on here. And it quickly becomes this addiction that I know how addictive that can be. But when they're developing, there's no control over those impulses. I mean, it's a big part of intentionally raising kids. Like, how much do we allow them to be consumed by technology?
It's a great question. The value base of tech and the family, right? And understanding where you draw the line, like, okay, no tech at the dinner table. We're going to actually have a conversation. No one's going to look at phones. No one's going to, talk about tech. Let's talk about what's really going on. That's a very valuable thing. In fact, I would argue, looking back for me, parenting, having a constant, steady model of family dinner and talking about life without tech was actually one of the best things that I think I could have done for my son looking back. Because, for 15 plus years, I worked hard to get there at night, to be there for him, to have that dinner with no tech. And that was conscious. And that forum of conversation, I think, built trust, and it created a value base, and it created ethics, and these things are way more important, and it's really easy to lose sight of that.
So I want to run some piece of data by you guys and just get a reaction, because when I heard it, I was shocked. What % of American households are made up of a mother and a father and kids? What back in the day we used to call a nuclear family.
So today, what's that?
And by the way, this is U.S. Census data. Today, what percentage of children in America grow up with a mother and father present?
I mean, we're in Santa Cruz. I don't know if we're in a bubble or what we are, but I've got several different clients that it's a mother and a mother, and they go through the same, their happy Facebook posts that my family posts, and the same, I talk to them, the same struggles we go through. I mean,
is your question gender neutral?
Yeah, actually, well, I didn't take it that way. This is so the Census Bureau. The Census Bureau says a mother and a father. You know, I don't know if that excludes a mother and a mother or a father and a father. I'm guessing it does, but interestingly enough, the number is 23.5%.
Wow.
Now, you know, just, and I don't think anybody in this room disagrees with what I'm about to say. As a matter of fact, I know you do. I think if a child grows up with a mother and a father, like a child who grows up with a loving parental relationship that they can model, like, is way ahead of any other child that doesn't have that, right?
Amen.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But still, like, it's not even 25%.
Yeah. It's probably not even 25%, including alternate models, right, of same-sex couples. I bet it's actually a small percentage because separation is more the norm, or independence is more the norm, which is sad, right? Because kids benefit from having more than one parent and having the perspective of multiple points of view. And, you know, doesn't matter what the shell is love, right? If you got two people loving the kid and telling them they love them every day, that's a big difference.
But I guess what I'm looking for a specific reaction to is, let's just call it 75% to make the math simple. 75% of kids in the United States of America grow up without a dad in the house.
Well, I think what that equates to for most people is a single mom, right? I mean, there are some probably a growing number of single dads for whatever reason, but yeah, John and I were talking about this earlier today. Like, I was raised by, you know, a single mom, and we're talking about with both of us are engaged in being dads, and our wives are off the hook, like amazing moms and totally in the process, and it's still freaking hard. So to all you single moms out there, you know,
Props.
Props to you.
There's nobody out there, Mike. It's just the four of us.
Oh. well, shit. All I can say is, if I had to do it, I'd be. But I would certainly not want to be a single parent if I could avoid it, because it's freaking hard with two parents, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard. And it goes to your first point of, you know, having an amazing partner to team with. You know, it would be very difficult. I know a lot of people do it, and you know, kids are looking to their parents to model. And you know, I think that the single moms out there that raise these children, I know they put everything into it and have to balance and make choices that are very difficult. You know, I'm super thankful that I have my wife there and I can be there. But I know there's a lot of circumstances where that's not the case. I mean, 25%, 23%, that's shocking stat.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's a bummer for all those kids that don't have the benefit of two parents, particularly, you know, from the dad perspective. I think the importance of a dad being able to help a boy transition to man is different than two women parenting to help a young boy, right? I think women understand women in a way that is different than men understand boys turning to men. And the aspect of a kid who doesn't have a dad to help him kind of grow up to understand fundamentals about, you know, how to be polite to women, or how to, you know, find your way in the world and walk among other men, that is substantial. And if 75% of American kids don't have that, that's a shame. And I hope that, you know, dads who have the chance to help their kids, particularly boys, make that transition to manhood, to do that. Because to me, that's the biggest responsibility.
So let's talk about this for a second, because I think this is incredibly important. I have had this sinking feeling in the pit of my stomach for a very long time that we as a culture, we as a society, make a lot more good women than men. That's my life experience. Of late, I've started to dig into the data, because all these mass killings are driving me crazy.
Yeah, it sucks, right? Typically a man.
Not typically. Yeah. They're all men. Yeah. And the vast majority of them are younger men. And so I find myself asking the question, what the fuck is wrong with men? And so this may sound like a stupid question, but you're all fathers of young men, even little young men. Little mini-me's we got going. And I know all of you well enough to know how seriously you take raising your boys to be real men. And so I wonder, I'd love you guys to kind of unpack how you think about raising men.
So this is where the losery comes in, I think. So yeah, because I know my kids watch me. I know that everything I do, they watch. And I'm a model. How I treat my wife, how I talk about my work, how I treat other people that I'm around. They're
teaching by example.
They're watching everything I do. And I know I don't get that right, but I understand implicitly that I have a responsibility to them because they emulate, and that's what they pick up. And so, I think.
So you're leading by example.
By definition, right? And that's how these boys are learning how to behave and how you treat women and how you respond to your situations. Do you do it with self-control, or do you lash out? How do you control your emotions when my boys are 9 and 10 and they're very emotional, right? I mean, it's hard to control. So they're learning how to do that, and that's important that I'm there for that, right? Yep. And so boys that I can imagine how easy it is for boys without that role model in their life to pick up on anything very quickly, right?
Yep.
They need that. I think that's how you grow into a man, is by watching others.
Well, and to that point, and I'm actually looking for the exact data right now, so I don't have a specific number that I feel good quoting yet, but I've read in multiple places that over the last 40 years, there's been a material change in the number of men who are elementary school teachers. And so my hypothesis, and again, I don't have exact data yet, but it looks like it's showing up this way, is 75% of boys grow up without a dad around. And then they go to school. And when we were kids, roughly, it felt like in my life, half the teachers were male, certainly 40%. Yeah. And today, the preliminary numbers I've seen, again, I don't feel great for the sources, so I'm looking for a more reliable source, are suggesting that in elementary school, in some parts of the country, it's as high as 80% female. Mm. And so you have a scenario where boys are always in a highly female environment.
Yeah. It doesn't surprise me.
Well, I don't know if you guys knew, but before, my first career was as a second grade teacher down in Watsonville. Representing, there we go. But
20,
it was
20%.
I was the 20. It was a little less than 20% too.
It was?
Yeah. Coincidentally, the two other male teachers at the school turned into be two of my best friends in life, and one in particular, and they're both amazing role models for me as dads. But that's beside the point. But I can say that as a second grade teacher in Watsonville, which is a great community just south here of Santa Cruz, a lot of no male role models at all. So then at the end of the school year, getting ready for the next school year, the principal and the teachers would get together, and they'd have the cards of the names of the kids that were they're placing the classes for the next year. And there was always the boys that nobody wanted, like the little hellions, right? And I'd say, bring them on. I'll take them, because being a male with second graders, all I would say to that kid that was traditionally like the worst kid in class, I would say, hey man, you want to be my helper? And they would want to, and they would go from being like the worst kid in class to like the kid that would tell all the other kids, be quiet, Mr. Bloch is talking, so it was super easy from that point.
And that is such proof that you're a better human being than I am.
You don't do that with the chickens?
That's not what I would have said to that little fucking hellion.
Okay. So here, I'll get serious with you for a moment. Right. I think the premise of the father figure in in the young male in particular is archetypal and ancient, and that what has happened in society for thousands of years is that men would get together with younger boys and talk to them about the importance of being man and what it meant. And we have organizations like the Boy Scouts, which try and recognize that, with stuff like Eagle Scout. We have all kinds of organizational constructs, but the fundamental idea of taking a boy who you can just, it walks, it talks, it smells like a duck, it's a duck, it's now leaving boy, it's entering man. The fundamental idea of making a space to acknowledge that for your kid or a friend's kid is really, really important. And what I'm trying to talk about is the importance of ceremony, of acknowledging the transition from boyhood to man. And this has existed for centuries, right? Guys would get around a fire, they'd have some beef, they'd cook.
If you were Jewish, didn't they call them moil?
Yeah, exactly. Right. But what I'm trying to suggest is that we as dads have the opportunity to do that for our kids when the time is right. And that it's as simple as just getting a couple of buddies together, sit around a fire, have a little good food. And I did for my son.
So tell us. Yeah. So Ben, you did this amazing ceremony for Benji.
Yeah.
Right. And you did exactly this.
I did.
How many guys did you invite?
It's about a dozen.
About a dozen.
Yeah.
And so what did you do?
So we got some great food. We got a campsite. We surprised him, right? The point is, don't let them know it's happening, right? So you're all there. They come to the event and they're surprised, like they don't know what the hell is going on, right? And you make it clear to them that you're there to acknowledge the transition of boy to man.
And how old was he?
He was 17 at the time, and I think that's roughly the right age. Some kids it might be 15 or 16. Some it might be 18 or 19. It kind of depends on the kid, right? I mean, the point is, you as the dad need to step up and say, okay, I'm going to create a moment. And that moment is really just a night of a bunch of guys sitting around to share wisdom around what it means to, find your way in the world. And that is a very powerful thing. My pop did that for me. I did that for my son. We've done that for a couple other guys in my family. And I highly recommend the simple forum of getting people together to say, you're not a boy anymore. You're a man. It's ancient, right? It's Joseph Campbell would talk about it in The Power of Myth. I mean, with Bill Moyers in the interviews that he did in the 80s. I mean, these are things that have been around for a long time. And it's very easy to do, but it's very rewarding. Like when I had that when I was 17 and I was leaving home, and I know about it. And I know about it as kind of acknowledging that, okay, I'm going to be all right in the world. I know I can walk among men because somebody has told me that I'm a man. I mean, it's kind of like a bar mitzvah, it's a little different, but my point is, do that for your kids.
No, and I think it's great. Of course I'm not Jewish, but I remember going to my first bar mitzvah when I was 13. By the way, diversion. So
is this a rabbit hole you're talking about?
Yeah, exactly. Oh, there's a zebra. So this buddy of mine invites me to his bar mitzvah. Of course, I don't know what the fuck it is, right? Was raised Catholic. And so he's explaining to me what you're explaining is this ceremony, becoming a man and the whole thing. And I said, okay, well, so what happens? And he sort of tells me what happens. And he says, oh, and one other thing you need to know. On the way in at the front door, the rabbi stands there and he checks to make sure all the men are circumcised. And there's that split second where somebody catches and you're like, what? You're like, that can't be fucking right. Even at 13, I knew that wasn't right. But there was that second where like, wow, those
surprise bris for Chris.
Yeah, exactly.
So just to build on that, so my boys are a bit younger, right? But I believe that you can create those moments throughout their life that they remember along the way. Absolutely. And And, you know, the thing that comes to mind when my boys were 8 is that's the age where they got their knife.
Yeah.
Like I entrusted them with their pocket knife and made a big deal out of it. Like,
That's right.
you know, this is dangerous. You can hurt yourself but it can be, you know, a tool. And I gave my youngest, or no, he was my oldest at the time. I gave him his knife and I told him, you know, here's how you carve wood with the knife. Away from the hospital, towards the hospital. Right?
Very good advice.
Yes. But I think it was, so this was one of my losery moments because he carved his piece of wood and he took it and poked holes all throughout my RV. We were on a camping trip. And, and I found that and I was like, really? And so I took it and I broke his thing that he carved and I threw it out of the RV. And I don't know, that I think that made an impression on him and it made an impression on me too.
You're such a bad dad.
I think that was, you know, it was one of those moments where I look back, did I handle that properly? Because that made an impression on him. I know he'll remember that. But then, you know, we kind of created a plan to regain the trust and he got his knife back and, you know, that hasn't happened again. So, you know, I think it's important to create those moments throughout all of their childhood that they remember.
Pretty funny. I've been looking for a few months for my first like RV or camper or whatever. And I'm texting back and forth with John, who's my brother-in-law, and just asking him these like preschool, maybe kindergarten questions at best. And my last text, I was like, well, whatever we get, like the whole point is to spend time with the family and we can get our families together and you and I can drink beer and the wives and the kids are happy. And he's like, now you're finally catching on.
This is the definition of quality time. Right?
That's right.
Your goal is spend quality time with the kids. Right?
Drinking more beer with the boys.
Right. But
how do I make a drinking vacation with my buddies feel like a family vacation to my family?
It's all balance.
There you go.
yeah, no, you can really do that, and I think that's actually really important that you create that model and you show them that it's okay, you know, and especially if you get to some of the most beautiful places in, you know, state parks and, you know, hang out and show them nature and teach them the importance of just hanging out and being together and real conversation. And
So let's jump into that. You know, one of the biggest things, I would put it in the top most important things my dad gave me was a love of nature and what we used to call the outdoors.
Yeah.
Right? Because he would take us camping every summer. And when I was a Cub Scout, he was like the volunteer dad, Cub Scout counselor, and all of those things. And, you know, the first time I went canoeing was with my dad. And the first time I went whitewater rafting was with my dad. And of course, he gave me skiing. And so, you know, that's a gift that for me, first of all, of course, you have the memories of doing that with your dad. And then you have the love of those things on an ongoing basis in your own life with your own friends and yourself, and then revisiting with your dad and all of that. So with all that said, I'm curious how you guys think about, you know, outdoor adventuring with your boys.
Yeah. So that's everything that I think about with my boys is how to keep them off the screens and how to keep them out of inside. You know, they love to, like, the default mode is to hang out on the couch with the screen. And so everything I do is always trying to create time outdoors, whether it's learning how to mountain bike, learning how to surf, getting in the waves, going to the beach, getting on the motorcycles, going camping. You have to plan that stuff out. It doesn't just happen, because the default mode is to just do nothing inside and be on the screens. Like, that is a real challenge that I have with 9 and 10-year-olds, is to keep them away from that. Yeah. Like, literally, I will lock the iPads up for months at a time, because I want them to do everything outdoors so that they learn to appreciate it. Now, I'm not pushing them into anything, because my boys are very, very different. The older one is much different than the younger one. And so my goal is just to expose them to as much as possible of the things that I love and, you know, that I appreciated, but I just want to lay the plate out for them and let them gravitate to the things that they can learn to appreciate. So I am not like a construction guy, right? I've been in tech my whole life. Well, I did some construction when I was a teenager, but that was like, I wasn't doing the.
You know the difference between a wrench and a hammer.
Yeah, I do. But so I it's like, okay, I want to take a project on that the boys can be a part of, and they can see the outcome, the process. They can enjoy it at the end. So Half Pipe was a great project that we started a couple of years ago. So they helped. They carried lumber, and we followed plans, built this Half Pipe, and it turned out great. They were a part of it, and now we've moved on to the treehouse. Yeah.
But are they skateboard champions?
Yeah. So the biggest hurdle to overcome is the drop in. And my youngest one, he was standing on top of the ramp. He's looking down, and I told him, I said, you just have to scream and say you're doing it and go. You just have to let out the scream and go. And he did. He let out the scream, and he dropped in, and he pulled it. And it was one of those things that he overcame, and he talks about that still. It's a scary thing. You're standing on top of a half pipe. You have to commit, right? And that's just, it's not vertical. No, definitely not vertical. But no, they love it. They play on it all the time.
So my take on all that is that the responsibility of the parent, in my opinion, is to help the child find the passion. And the passion doesn't necessarily need to mesh with the parent's passion. That I felt like my job as a dad was to expose my kid to as many things as I could to see what stuck. And some stick and some don't. Like, I love surfing. My kid didn't love surfing. I was a snowboarder. My kid didn't like snowboarding. But my kid liked skiing. So we connected on skiing. I could ski. He could ski. We skied together. Then he found tennis. I suck at tennis, but he went on to be captain of the tennis team, and they won fucking state championships. I mean, like, he was really good at tennis. It kind of doesn't matter. It's not the thing you fling. It's the fling itself. So help your kid find the fling, right? Whatever that thing is. That's, to me, the secret of being open-minded around all that stuff. It's like, I don't have a preconceived notion that because I love to surf, the kid's going to love to surf. It's, the job is, what does the kid love? And find that.
Yeah, couldn't agree more.
Now, interestingly, of course, all of you have boys and not girls.
Yeah.
Right.
And so I think if we're going to have a conversation about how do you raise legendary young men and ultimately successful, hopefully very, very old men, a big part of that is how they treat women, their relationships with women, and so forth. And so how do you think about teaching your boys how to be gentlemen? And how do you think about that, particularly in the absence of a female sibling?
I call them out consistently for how they treat their mom. So number one, it's modeling. Clearly, they're watching how I treat my mom, my mom and my wife.
Yeah.
Both, right?
And your mother-in-law probably, right?
And my mother-in-law, exactly. All the key women. But they see my relationship with my wife most consistently. And how I treat her makes a huge impact on them, and how I call them out for how they treat her. Yeah. And I will specifically say, when I see something that I don't agree with, I would never say that to mom. I would never say that to my wife. Don't you ever say that to her. Yeah. You need to respect her like I respect her. Yeah. Because that's, I mean, they're watching me, right? And that's where they're learning to treat women.
Yeah. Acting like a gentleman in the way that you would expect other men to act with women. It's probably, I'm not a father of a woman, but that would be the answer that I would give, right? If I'm always acting as the way that I would like a man to act in front of a woman, in front of the girls, that's probably about as good as I could do. Not having a daughter. That would be my answer.
And this, Ben, may be an obvious question, but I mean, is it in your mind? Is it the same way that it is in John's mind, that essentially if the behavior that your son, particularly when he was younger, saw with you and Mel and you and the other women in your life, that if he saw you being a gentleman, he would mirror that, and that was the key?
Yeah, I think you're trying to act and lead by example, right? So like if Mel cooked, I cleaned. If she cleaned, I cooked. I mean, we taught him at a young age that it's about a team, it's about a partnership, it's about, making sure that you're helping out and respecting the other.
What do you mean? I thought it was about one person's on the couch drinking beer and farting. The other person on the couch is doing. No, that's not it, huh?
So my parents divorced when I was young, and my mom raised me and my brother, and she said to me, I'm not going to have you eating out of cans. I'm going to teach you how to cook, right? So she taught me how to cook, and I wanted to make sure that my son had that too. And now, he does that. And I think there's a certain amount of empowerment that comes from that, to acknowledge, that he can be that provider of abundance in the family as well. And that, if you model that for your kid, you're only giving them an advantage. There's no harm in that. There's only upside to teaching your kid to help out with parenting and be willing to take on tasks that might have traditionally only been on the mom. Show them that no, you don't have to do that. In fact, mom likes it when you cook. Mom likes it when you do that and relieve her of that responsibility.
I think it's teaching them leadership qualities to step up and help, right? And not expect things to be done for you, but step in to serve others around them and be helpful. Service. I mean, that's a leadership quality that is being taught through those actions, for sure.
And then, maybe for you, Ben, as they begin to get a little bit older and they start, wanting to go on their first date and this kind of stuff, there's obviously in the business world and in the world in general, there's been a huge amount of dialogue about Me Too. And so as they start to become young men, and at 12, 13, I don't know about you guys, but I had a testosterone, volcano erupt, and today we got the internet, and it's a lot different than when we were kids, right? And so as you think about when Benji was 13 to maybe 17, you tell me, but those sort of testosterone explosion years and dealing with the sort of the early stages of becoming a man, how did you think about it back then, particularly as he started to express interest in the opposite sex?
So first of all, I think both Melanie and I were very vocal on the notion of respect and really, respecting the partner that you're with. We were very open. We didn't know that he was necessarily heterosexual or homosexual. We didn't really care, frankly, but we assumed he would be hetero, and we assumed that would be female, and we assumed therefore that he should treat a woman with respect. And so we tried to talk about that, but we also made it kind of fun. Like, he was musical at the time, he could play guitar, he could sing, and I would say to him things like,
he's way more handsome than the average straight guy based on,
he's a handsome guy who could sing and play guitar. And I would say, hey, so a couple of words of advice, Benji. First of all, always wear a condom. And second of all, if you ever actually want to use that condom, keep playing guitar.
Good advice.
So, a little humor goes a long way, is the point. But yeah, Chris gets it.
Yeah, exactly. I don't want to make light of a horrible thing, but remember when that raging asshole in Toronto, killed those women with that van, and he declared on Facebook, did you guys hear this? That he was part of this group of men called incels. Yeah. Did you hear this?
Yeah.
And incel, of course, stands for involuntary celibate. Like, yeah, well, hey, we were all incels once. And some of us got good at sports, and some of us learned to play guitar, and some of us learned to get a personality and some core values, and to brush our teeth and to not fart, and et cetera, et cetera. And sooner or later, not so incel, you dumb fuck.
Definitely didn't drive a van over people.
Yeah.
It's horrible.
Yeah, I mean, I don't.
Yeah.
I'm not making fun of that, of course.
I know.
Yeah,
But, like, this is, I guess, my point about we as a society not, making so many more good women than we do men is like, these incels, what are you even fucking talking about? Become a person of value, and women will want to be around you. And whether that's playing guitar, being an athlete, or doing good at math, or whatever the fuck thing it is.
Right.
And just being a good person.
That's right. And teaching the kid about the importance of values and ethics, I think the fundamentals, like we're all talking about, of trying to be a good dad, showing up, telling them you love them every day, being there for dinners and.
Hey, can I stop you there for a sec, Ben?
Yeah.
I remember a little while ago I saw a question on Quora, and I'll get the question wrong, but I'll paraphrase the idea. And the idea was essentially, if you tell somebody you love them a lot or on a regular basis, do you devalue the impact or the value or the importance of the word? So how many times in a communication with Benji would you communicate that you love him?
Over 20 years, probably 80% of the days.
That he was alive and living at home.
Yeah.
And if you talk to him on the phone today.
Oh, I still say I love you.
Yeah.
Proud of you. Great job.
Do you ever end a phone call with your son where you don't say I love you?
Sometimes, yeah. But, he knows.
He's not confused.
No, there's no question.
And so what do you think about that question of, well, if I say I love you too much, it'll lose its impact?
I don't think it's true.
I think it's nonsense.
Yeah. I think
it's a natural expression of how you feel. And I say it daily to my wife.
Yeah.
I say it daily to my kids.
Yeah.
And it doesn't devalue it at all. In the slightest. They say it back. And I don't think that
helps build a value base. It helps build
less would make me feel more loved when they say it.
Yeah.
Yeah. When you hear your 2-year-old unprompted tell you that he loves you higher than the clouds and higher than the moon, as corny and cheesy as that sounds, like, I mean, there's no better feeling.
It melts your heart.
I mean, that your whole life is worth it right there for that moment when your 2-year-old says, unprompted. I mean, you say, I love you, and they say, I love you too. Or my littlest is named Judah. I love you beyond the sun, or that's prompted. But when he comes up to you unprompted and says, Daddy, I love you higher than the clouds and higher than the moon, I mean, you're pretty much, your life is done right there. Like,
I'm good.
I win. Take me out. Winning. I'm done. Right? I mean, that's it. So I don't think whoever says that devalues it, I call bullshit. And I don't think you could ever say it to another human being enough. And if you did say it too much, then that's a great problem to have, that you told someone I love you too many times.
And I'll just, of course I'm not a dad, but I'll share with you on a side note. No, I'm a dad to the hens, and we'd have 2 kitty cats now too, so maybe they count. The interesting thing about my relationship with kids is you can want to be a kid's uncle, whether you're a blood uncle or an adopted uncle, as with Mike's kids. But the kid decides whether you're the uncle or not. Because if you want to throw frisbee with the kid and the kid doesn't, or you want to play whatever it is at whatever age, right? The kid decides. And so, Mike, when your kids run to me and give me a hug and throw their arms around me and tell me that they love me, like, I can't make Bobo do that.
Yeah, that's legit.
And maybe he has to love you, right? But he doesn't have to come anywhere near me.
Well, as he's made it very clear throughout his 5 years of life, like, he makes his own decisions. So, and he doesn't give it up easily, as you know. He's not
You get a hold in the pocket with the
Right.
little fucker.
Yeah, he's not, and I felt it over the years where I'm like, I just want him to like embrace you, and you just got to give them their space. But what it really is like we've been talking about. It's just consistency over time.
Yep.
They have no doubt like who you are and what role you play in our life, that you're always there, and Uncle Chris has always got a big hug for you. And when you're 1 year old and bald crazy Uncle Chris comes running at you like excited beyond belief that you're alive, it's a little intimidating. So kids like Bowen might pull back, but over time, like, they have no doubt in their heart of hearts like where they stand with you, and those kids love you. Hence the conversation this morning about Auntie Chris.
Auntie Chris, yeah.
And the carrots from his garden.
And as you guys are talking, and I'm sort of pulling up to 30,000 feet, a conversation I find myself in a lot is men today, and maybe more young men, but I'll just say men, have less and less examples of what a good man is. This is something I hear a lot. And as I listen to you guys talk, you guys are all real men. And there are some stereotypes about real men that you're not. So I don't know if you'd be willing to go there with me, but like, you guys are, let me just start with this. You guys are committed partners to the women in your life. And there's a male archetype that, as you all well know, is the opposite of that. So I'd be curious about, let's start with the ladies in your life, how you think about them and who you are for them and who they are for you.
I'll let Ben take that one.
Your generosity is exceeded only by your good looks, my friend.
Well,
in other words, fuck you.
Fuck you.
What was the next question?
Right. So, no, I think that partnering is really important in the construct that you're describing, and having a partner that sees you as whole and can understand you as a person and supports you as a whole being, be that, kind of emotional or intellectual or whatever, that getting the right partner who gets you as a man allows you to be a little more anti-traditional construct of the male that you're describing, because probably most of those men that are that you use to counter us aren't great dads. In fact, I would argue that having a woman who can step up and be an equal partner and see you in that light, and support you as a wonderful dad is essential to kind of bucking the trend that you're describing of that archetype of the kind of man that isn't a great father, right? So it takes two to tango is the point, and therefore the female is essential to the male in the aspect of being able to be a really good dad.
go ahead, Mike.
No, I was just gonna say, in my family, love is when my wife's coming home from work and she comes home and I cleared the dishwasher and I loaded the freaking dishwasher. Like, that's love in our family. Like that.
Little things.
I don't know why they love that shit, but they love your ass when you empty the dishwasher,
they love that
don't you?
shit, right? So yeah.
John.
So, yeah, just one comment on that. I think your point is spot on. Like that traditional archetype is probably not a great dad. I do think you can be a strong husband and father and leader in your family, and not compromise. And I also believe that you can teach, especially your boys, to be very strong and to stand up for whatever it is they believe in, not let anybody push them around. You don't have to be, I mean, we've been talking a lot about love and, some touchy-feely stuff here, but I do think that it's important that boys have confidence. At least that's what I try every day to instill in my boys, is you don't let anybody talk to you in a disrespectful way. It's okay to stand up for yourself. And I especially want you to stand up for people around you that you see that injustice happening. That's your role, is to stand up for the people who are not standing up for themselves.
What was that story, John, about your youngest standing up for the oldest on the playground?
Yeah,
I remember something about that.
Yeah, my youngest is naturally, he is much more aggressive and assertive. And so, I treat my boys differently because naturally, inherently, they have different traits, right? They're very, very different. And the younger one I've got to tone him down a little bit because he's much more assertive. He's not going to let anybody talk shit to him, and I've got to make sure that doesn't get out of hand. But
He's going to slap somebody out of context.
He won't hesitate to punch you in the face, And the older one, he's much more easygoing, and nothing really bothers him. Like, everything rolls off his back, right? But in this one case that you're referring to on the playground, this one boy was really picking on my older boy, and he didn't care. He was like, yeah, whatever. But my younger one came up, and this other boy was much bigger and just popped him, because he's not afraid. Yeah. He's small but mighty, right? Yeah. And so it's interesting because I've got to definitely, bring out their qualities and manage them differently.
Yeah. That's a good parenting challenge. Right
so
there.
I want to talk about this because I think, based on my preliminary research, and I'm still digging into it, the sort of joke that George Carlin had around the pussification of America, there's actually more truth to it than I would have liked. And that the sort of boyness or manness is getting pounded out of boys. And look, this may make me sound like a Neanderthal, but when you're 8 years old, sometimes you need to smash a guy in the face. And when you're 50 years old, there are situations that you still get into in the very civilized, world of America. I'm not talking about driving into, some neighborhood that like everybody's killing everybody. I'm talking about going to a baseball game where some other guy will look you in the eye, or there'll be some situation that percolates up. And if you don't look that other guy in the eye and fucking man up, and that guy understands that if he does whatever the fuck he thinks he's thinking about doing, you're going to be a fucking problem, he stands down. I don't know about you, but there is some jungle shit that happens in the life of a man in completely unexpected ways, and sometimes through no fault of your own. And so with all that said, how do you guys think about, listen, let me say something completely outrageous. To some degree, all of us, male or female, are here because our ancestors were good at farming, fucking, and fighting. That's why our DNA survived, right? And so that fighting thing exists in all of us, male and female. And of course, we know it exists more in men. And if it doesn't get channeled, I think bad things happen. And also, to your point, John, there's certain situations in life where you're going to have to stand down either an asshole or some bona fide evil. And so how do you think about sort of that element of standing up for yourself, self-defense, etc.?
So maybe I'll go first here.
Sure.
But, so number one, I think there's truth to that. I think there are situations where boys especially need to have confidence and know when they need to stand up. I'll never advocate violence. If I ever hear about my boys being the bully, they know they've got it coming, because it's never okay to oppress other people, and but it is okay to stand up for yourself. And no matter what, they know they will not be in trouble if somebody's coming after them and they stand their ground. They know that from me. Even if the principal gets them in trouble, they know from me it's okay to stand up for yourself. But they are never to be the one that goes after and hurts other people in any way, emotionally, physically. I I never condone violence. But if they need to have the tools, number one, verbally, to address the situation. And we all know that doesn't necessarily happen with kids, right? You're never, going to talk your way out of a bully situation if they're coming after you. And so I want him to have the tools to stand up in that case. And he knows it's perfectly okay by me that he's done that. And even better if he's done it for somebody else. Like that's really what I want to see out of my boys, is that they are the ones that stick up for other people.
So, and I want to get to both Mike and Ben on this topic, but I don't want to lose what you're saying, John. The sticking up for others. There's a term that's come out of the military that's now sort of more broadly known, and we had Commander SEAL Team 3 Commander Mark Devine on Legends and Losers twice, actually, which was an absolute thrill. And on one of the episodes, he talked specifically about this. It's the concept of being a sheepdog. They're normal people. They're just living their lives, having a good time. They're sheep. Not in a pejorative sense. It's just normal people. Then there are criminals, assholes, bullies. Then they are wolves. And then there are sheepdog. And there are professional sheepdog, our military, our law enforcement. But he made a striking comment to me, John. He said that CEOs, entrepreneurial leaders, community leaders should be sheepdogs.
Typically are. I mean, whether you should be or not.
Well,
That's
so I'm
my opinion. A lot.
You think so?
Yeah, I do.
I think there's a lot of wolves out there too that can advance because they're bullies. And we're not necessarily talking about violence, right, where you get in a fist fight, but people who bully people around to get to the place they're in. And I think those are people that's true, and they can be successful that way. It's true. You can absolutely be successful by bullying people around and rising to the top that way, but it's not a human way to get there. Like, we all see examples of people who have lots of success that are bullies in this world. But that's certainly not what I'm teaching my boys.
No, for sure not.
They need, obviously.
But I think the metaphor of the sheepdog and teaching your kid to be willing to step into that function and role is entirely appropriate. Because I agree, there's a bunch of bullshit in the world. People, particularly men, treating other men in that model, and that young man who's willing to step up and say, fuck you. Basically bullshit. This is not right. For the most part, that needs to be taught. You need, in my opinion, it's a rare kid who just kind of takes that persona on.
Yeah, they need
without
to
any
recognize
instruction.
Yeah,
It's typically a dad who helps them understand right and wrong, and typically a dad who understands that it's okay to step up into the face of that and confront that, and to look at toe to toe, right in the eye, and say, this is wrong.
And so that leads me to a question, both from my father and grandfather, and maybe my own experience at a young age. It's hard to really know, but I can remember things my grandfather and father did that embedded these kinds of ideas in my head. Of course, I didn't call it that at the time, but this idea of being a sheepdog was very, very strong, right? I was a latchkey kid. I'm older than my sister. We walked to school together. I had to protect her on the way back and forth. All of that, right? And so that injustice towards others, NFW, right? You don't get to walk into a situation and do something horrible to people in my presence. This is just not what happens.
You're gonna right the wrong.
Yeah. And so I guess, how do you instill that in your boys? And then how do you think about, is there any specific training you think young men need in this regard? Or how do you think about this sort of sheepdog concept?
Yeah, I think some of it's natural. I think there's an innate trait in some people where they just have that, and they're going to step in and do what they need to. But I think it's about talking out situations and scenarios and recognizing when something is happening, because this happens on the playground every day. Kids are horrible to each other. It's just the way it is, right?
Always has been.
It always has been. So there's opportunities every day to, have a teaching moment, and you talk them out. Like, what happened on the playground today? Did you see anything, going down? What did you do? How'd you handle that? How'd that make you feel for that person? Were you thinking about them? And so you just have to keep that at the top of mind so that they learn it's okay. Number one, they have permission to step in, and that's actually the expectation. Yep. Is to make sure that they're not seeing that type of injustice.
In addition, I don't think there's anything wrong with formal training, Krav Maga, self-defense, those kinds of things. Like my boy said to me at 15, hey, I'm going to go to Peru for the summer and teach English. Okay, so where are you going to be? Like in a really tough city. I'm going to be like walking around by myself, riding the bus, and like, okay, so let's take some time.
And standing out because he's a blondie, ready, blue-eyed.
I'm 6'2", I'm blonde, and everyone else is not, right?
Way not.
Right. And so, okay, let's do some self-defense. Let's help you understand what happens when shit gets tough and when you fight and when you don't. And, let's walk through that. And so I took the time, to do that. And I think that was a worthwhile investment because he came out of that talking about how, there were moments he was scared, whatever things happened, but he came out stronger and he came out able to carry his own in a city, didn't matter where it was. Right. So even though he wasn't yet 18, he was able to kind of carry his own as a young man. And that investment, I think, is well worth it. Right. In other words, don't be afraid to enlist the service of a professional like Elliot. I actually had him go to, a self-defense expert for several lessons and talk about if shit goes down, this is what you're going to do, right? If the guy pulls a gun, give him your wallet. Exactly. Because it's a gun. Right? Don't
be smart.
Be smart, right?
That's a real simple one right there.
Well, like in 2018, you also have to teach your kids. I guess we're learning this ourselves. Like someone talks trash to you in the parking lot at the Giants game. Like, is that really what you want to stand up for? And then who knows what craziness or untreated mental health or what's going on with that human being. So it's a little more complicated, I think, raising kids in the modern era where you want to teach them to stand up for themselves and stand up for others, but you kind of got to pick your battles because you nowadays you give the finger to the wrong guy on the freeway and who knows what
get shot,
what could happen, and so you just gotta, I don't know how the answer to it, but it differentiate when it's just your ego and their ego or when it's like a real threat to you and your friends or your family.
What you're raising here is super important in terms of being smart and how to be safe and how to assess the situation as you get older. I fully expect, and I'm sure you've kind of gone through that with Benji, just how to stay safe and how to be smart about the situation. I think the context that my boys are in now, I know how impressionable little kids are and how brutal other kids can be, and so in that context, I always want them to stand up for others. And there's no God forbid there's ever any kind of weapon there, but that's the context that I'm in with them right now. That's on the playground, you stand up and don't be afraid. You do the right thing.
So let's go to another maybe tough topic. Socrates, I want to get the quote right. Socrates famously said, "The male libido is like being chained to a madman."
Here we go.
And I don't know about you, but let me just say it this way. Some of us have a madman who bangs the chain and yells and bangs some more, right? And so, and of course, fucking, fighting, and farming, right? Like, that's why your genes made it here, right? So the male body is like successful because of that. And yet we don't talk about this, right? Generally, we don't talk a lot about how to train young men how to let me say it this way, how to be the owner of a male libido in the modern world. And so I'm curious, guys, how you think about how to teach boys and young men how to be the proprietor of a male libido that is a madman banging on a chain in the world that we live in today.
So I'm just coming into this phase. I'd love to hear what Ben says on this topic. He's been through it.
Well, I joked earlier about, keep playing guitar and wear a condom, right? I mean, that philosophy actually represents a lot of the open conversation that we had about it's great to have sex. You should do that. You should experiment as much as you can. Don't be afraid to do that. Be willing to treat your partner with great respect. No means no. All the rules associated with the dialogue around interaction of courting. We had a lot of candid conversations about that it was fine to, experiment, that you should experiment, that, what you don't want is to never experiment and then get married to somebody and realize that you're not happy. You want to, now's the time in your youth to try all those things. Just practice safe sex and practice, respect and communication with your partner, and know how to have a dialogue about what's okay and what's not okay. And, if she doesn't want to do anything, don't do it. And if she wants to try something, do it. And it's fine to do it. In fact, it's great to do it because, fucking is great. I mean, it really is. And help your kid understand that that's a good thing, and that, you can have a safe and wonderfully positive mental attitude about all that, which is still empowering the female authority in the decision and embracing the whole, I'm with her movement and Me Too stuff that is about the voice of the female. There's a way to approach sexuality as a man in that construct that I think my wife was very good at helping him understand, because she's pretty tuned into the whole kind of female zeitgeist and everything. So we would have candid conversations about that stuff. And my point is, there's no taboo in having an honest dialogue about helping a son or a woman, in my opinion, but in our case, we only had one boy, a son, be healthy about how to approach sexual relationships with young women in a way that doesn't demean them and in fact supports their choice, in a way that let him decide with his own value system, because at the end of the day, it's his ethics and his values in the middle of the night, right, in the back seat, right? Parenting is gone. It's what the kid wants to do at that moment. You've done your job if you've exposed what you think is right, and they hopefully then follow suit with something that is appropriate. And there's no limit to how often you can do that. In my opinion, it's better to have that conversation more than not. I took advantage of it, thanks to you, Christopher, with so many days in Tahoe. It was just Benji and me. We would go and go up to Tahoe and go hit squaw, and the chair on the time on the chairlift was awesome for that. As he was growing up as a young man, to sit on the chairlift and talk about ladies and what it meant, that was like a perfect spot.
Well, and you bring up an interesting thing, and I wish I could remember who I heard say it or read it, or so I apologize, because I always like to give credit where credit's due. But in spite of that, this paradigm that I have played with for a long time, which you and I have talked about, Ben, which is men tend to have shoulder-to-shoulder relationships. That is to say, we do shit with each other. And women tend to have relationships that are more face-to-face. They tend to speak and talk and communicate with each other. And that if women are going to do shoulder-to-shoulder activities, it tends to come from the genesis of face-to-face activities. And the opposite is true of men. And so what I love about your saying, and it was certainly my experience with my dad, and we talked about the outdoor stuff with your boys earlier, guys, is isn't it fascinating how shoulder to shoulder shit for us is really the only thing that leads to quote unquote face to face shit?
Well, I think most people today, most guys today, follow the construct of shoulder to shoulder. But if you think about what I was saying earlier about the importance of ceremony and acknowledging the transition of boy to man and sitting around a fire and talking about what's real, that's face to face. And if you go to the trouble of having that kind of relationship with your son or your daughter or whoever, and you have those kind of male friends in your life where you can talk about what's really happening, the shoulder to shoulder construct is secondary. The primary is that which is real and that which is substantial to kind of counter that trend that you're describing. And what I'm saying is parenting in the construct of helping your child understand sexuality is best served by the face-to-face sincere conversation way more than the shoulder to shoulder.
That's awesome. The other thing I wanted to ask you guys about while I still have you is, and let me just preface it by saying, I have no concept, of course, of what it's like to be a woman. I would imagine some element of this is true for women, and the more I talk to women about it, the more it seems to me it may be as true for them as it is for men. But that said, I know for sure as a man, a huge part of self-actualization is who we are in our careers. Do we achieve some level of what most people would call success? Whether that's as a master carpenter or being, an extraordinary, reliable employee at some company, or whether it's being Elon Musk or, a Nobel Prize winner or anybody in between. There is an element of challenging oneself, being paid for a service that you deliver a value for, that regardless of who you are, how old you are, it's a huge part of being a human being. And as a man, of course, we are pre-programmed to be providers, to use one of my favorite expressions, to put moose on the hood. And so with all that said, the data shows today that more men are disengaged from the workforce than ever before. And somewhere around 20% of men have actually opted out of the workforce today. And they fucking stay at home and play video games. It's terrifying. I'm just getting into this because I've been obsessed with this question of what the fuck's wrong with men. So I don't have all my data collected and my thoughts formulated, but it's very clear that there's some percentage of men who just opt out of the workforce. There's a high percentage of younger men who do this, who live at home, et cetera, et cetera. We know this. And so given how important work is from both a financial perspective to be a good provider, but also from a personal growth, personal development perspective, how do you think about developing your boys to be successful in their chosen professions?
Well, I don't know what you guys think, but I'm a realtor, and I don't think in 5 years I've ever talked to Bowen once about a commission check. He would have no idea what that is, or he knows that I go to work, but whenever I talk about work, we talk about that we're serving others, and that what is Daddy doing? Daddy's going to help people with their houses, and that's just kind of the mindset I tried to have with my boys, is that we're really here to serve others. Yeah. That's the highest thing you could ever do, be of service. Is to be of service. Awesome. And to help others. So that's when I'm, I don't know what they get out of it, but that's, I have to say, that's a great idea. That's at least what I talk about. Please continue. Yeah.
So you don't come home from work and go, there was this really old lady, and man, I took her for everything she had, and it was fucking awesome.
Right.
No.
It hasn't happened yet, but but yeah, it's also a lot of fun. I've Bowen's been to me and open houses, and out of need because my wife was working or sleeping because she worked nights. I had to take him on showings or whatnot, but I think he gets it that he knows that daddy goes to work, and I think hopefully both the boys know that daddy helps people, and that's kind of
That's fantastic.
and that's what I'm trying to impart on them, and that's kind of how I'm trying to run my business is you help people, right? So I don't know about you guys that have different positions.
Yeah. So I think the way I talk to my boys about this is clearly daddy's spending an immense amount of time doing something that's actually apart from the family, and that thing has to have some sort of meaning, right? I mean, the worst thing to do, I think personally, is just to go pursue money, right? And the success from a money standpoint comes from doing something well, and if you truly love it, that's the most important thing, is that you're spending that time well doing something that you love. And I consider myself an entrepreneur. I've been in Silicon Valley working in tech companies. I love building companies, building value, and doing it with a team where you're seeing something grow. And that's what I really love doing. And if you can do something with purpose, that company is providing value to other people and changing something, that is what gets me going, right? And so I have purpose, I have meaning, and that's what I try to communicate to my boys is find what you love. Don't focus on the money. That they kind of think about success in terms of money, and it buys you nice things, and it means success, but that is the last thing that I want them to think about, because you spend so much time with your work. I mean, I can't imagine being in a career where it's painful to do it. Like that would be a hard way to live. I know, that a lot of people have to do what they need to do to get by. And, props to you if you're in a situation like that. But, I think that's why at this point, it's important that they have the latitude to find those things that they love and pursue that as work.
Reminds me of a friend who jokes that if you have a job that you love, you never work a day in your life, and he's right. I mean, if you find that love.
Was that Fred?
There are days.
Ziegler, or
there are days where there's work. Let's just be clear.
His name's Fred. And
Some days it's good thinking.
Yeah, right. I would actually answer it from a more kind of metaphysical perspective, in that I try and combine philosophy.
Is this because the whiskey's kicking in here, Ben?
No, it's because of my belief system. Because I've for about 30 years, I've been a Buddhist, even though I was raised kind of Lutheran, and we got married Episcopalian, and we baptized our son. I've thought about the context of religion and God and what it means to have value in the construct of work. And when I think about the answer to your question, I think a lot about finding something that is helping the person feel whole as a human being, whole in the sense of conjoining the Eastern sense of mind and value, and the way in which like half the world has no money because they
No. 99% of the world has no money.
Yeah, well, but the Eastern philosophies and religion, which kind of don't think about capitalism, they think about progression of mind and Buddha and self and love, versus the capitalist society, which has no sense of self, right? What I tried to teach my son was that it's very important to understand both halves, that you want to find your own sense of spirituality, whatever that is, and you want to find your own sense of passion and love and work, whatever that is. And when you can conjoin the two, and when you can feel like you are living in a way that is making yourself spiritually happy, but also feeling like you're giving what you need to society in terms of economic construct, that is a really good place to be, whatever that is for you, right? And all of us have a different answer to that question. But if you can find that sense of wholeness, you have abundance. And if you have that abundance, you have happiness. And that is, in essence, a perpetual recipe for happiness. If you can conjoin those two. And so
when and where is this class taught? And how do I sign my children up for it right now?
I don't know, but I think I need some more whiskey and maybe a little something else to go to Professor.
Sorry. Sorry. That's
no, don't apologize. That's awesome.
I'm sorry, but
no apologies required.
I try and
we'll chase any rabbit down any Buddhist hole you want. No, so actually, this does lead to an interesting question, though, which is, how do your beliefs about religion or God? John, I know you have a very powerful faith plays a very powerful role in your life, and Mike, of course, you grew up studying the Quran.
Maybe.
The Old Testament. And of course, you're married to a Christian and you're Jewish. And so I'm just curious how you guys think about the role of religion and faith in the context of raising your boys.
That's a great question. And I just realized we have a Buddhist, a Jew, and a Christian in this podcast. I think that's amazing. These are very different perspectives. So I'll just start. Our faith in my family is this single thing that ties us all together. Wow. And as I look back, we've had some things happen in our life where I think without our faith that tied us all together, it would have been very challenging to make it through those times. My youngest boy was, as a baby, it was a very challenging time for us. He was very sick and went through a lot.
That's the understatement of 2018 right there. And he was very sick.
Yeah. So he
almost didn't make it.
He almost didn't make it. He went through chemo, the whole 9 yards. And that's a moment in time where you are just terrified for your son. You are feeling very powerless. It's that time was very difficult. And as I look back on it, Angie and I were connected by our faith, and we stayed strong through that. And I've got to say, no matter how hard that time was, I saw God's divine hand throughout the entire thing. Wherever we were falling, he caught us. And so, that's been true through our entire life as a family. Yeah. And, it ties us together, and it will continue to. It's the foundation of my family, and it's how I choose to believe. And it's, that's where I would start for my family. It's square one is my faith. And there's no question it's a relationship. There's ups and downs, there's good times and bad times, and there's times where you feel distant and times where you feel close. But that's number one, and that's what I hope to impart to my kids first and foremost. And that comes back to being the example for your kids, and what they look at.
Yeah, John calls it faith, which there is a lot of faith there, but I think what we really all have in common is our values. And John and I are, like it or not, we're connected. We have our wives, like it or not, our wives are sisters.
Why is this dude in my family all of a sudden? Who's this guy that keeps showing up at Thanksgiving?
I'm the Jew boy that gets to tag along and all the. Is that a Jew throw? What's going on with that hairdo? Exactly. But the reality is, Buddhist or Jewish or Christian agnostic or whatever you call yourself, I think we all share the same values, and that's, in my opinion, that's really what ties us all together. I mean, my father-in-law, who comes from a long line of Christian pastors, and I mean, he's about as Christian as you possibly could get, I would think. I mean, I don't know what the definition of that is short of Jesus, but he is not
a minister in a church.
And
That's
here-
puts you pretty high up.
and here I am, this Jewish guy, like asking to marry his daughter. And to be honest, in 10 years plus of marriage, and he has not once questioned in any way, shape, or form, like my being a Jew or not being a Christian. Or I've had so many Christians try to convert me to being a Christian in my life that it's
he
just
loves
like,
you and your values.
Because he loves.
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
So that, I
He
mean, that's the
understands the
true
difference.
religion, is
That's
like
right.
the Ziggy Marley song, "Love is my religion." I mean, I know that's corny and cheesy to say that out loud, but
I love that song. Every time I hear it, the older I get, I'm like, oh, yeah, love is my religion.
but isn't that really what it? He knows that
Yeah.
we have the same values.
Yep.
I mean, Christopher, who doesn't go to church or temple, but if I asked him, I said, "Hey, Christopher, it's important to me. Would you come to temple with me and my
Right.
boys or my wife?"
Like,
He would in a heart.
Exactly.
So-
I need you to take a bullet for this. Could you do that? Yes.
Well, and actually, if I could just amplify
Yeah.
both of your in-laws, John and Mike, myself and Carrie, my wife, we're not necessarily, for religious people or more conservative people, the easiest people to accept and to include, right? We swear and we're outrageous, and there's certain people who might not be okay with that. And the two of them have just been nothing but this unbelievable beacon of love. And they see how Carrie and I are with you guys, and obviously your wives and your kids and the whole family and all that. And I know your father-in-law gets who Carrie and I are, and we're pretty fucking different. And it doesn't matter.
Right. They're accepting.
Well, it's,
And isn't that the definition of Muslim or Jewish or Buddhist or Christian? Like, I don't care. You're right. Whatever the version of the line is, love thy neighbor as thyself. That it starts there, right?
Yes, it does.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I think if you're not seeing love reflected in in relation to each other, there's something wrong there. Like if you don't see a reflection of that, then you've got to question the belief system. But I know with you, Mike, like we're family, and that is the bottom line. Like there's been nothing but love between our families, our wives, me and you. Like I've seen that come in.
Yeah.
I don't have any question about there's something being bigger than all of us tying us all together.
Yeah.
Period.
and if you fuck with John, you fuck with me.
Yeah.
Likewise.
And at the end of the day, if what we're talking about is being a dad and fathering, if you connect that to the notion of what it means to help your kid, if you're realizing that you're instilling a value system and the ethics associated with a certain belief system of what's right and wrong, and what you want is for your child to leave home, and you guys haven't faced this yet, but we have full empty nester, right? We're 2 years into college, kid's out on his own. I know if I die today, if Mel dies today, my partner, that this kid is going to be okay, because we have beat up those values in him in a way that lets him know that this is where he stands. And if we can help our kids have a strong position like that to walk in the world, that is a great duty as a dad, right? If we can help them understand, whether it doesn't really matter the construct, right? I mean, these Christian, Muslim, Buddhist, anything, it doesn't really matter. What matters is that you have an opinion, that you have a position, that you have a statement about what is right and what is wrong, and that you help your kid understand that so that they can walk in the world and know right and wrong, so that they can be a contributor. If you get to that point, regardless of age, to me, that's success. And I've had financial success, I've had whatever success, but I think my biggest success is that I know that I have helped my kid find that voice in themselves. And I value that as a dad, and I hope that other dads would strive to give their kids that, give them the backbone, the spine, to know what is their opinion, what is, regardless of religion, regardless of race, class, whatever, just have a voice. Treat that voice with authority and respect, and then take that into the world. You know, that in essence is, for me, Jesus Christ, Chris is losing it.
Christopher's dying over there. Well, I think I know where Ben stands. I think Christopher, you're alive.
Whiskey almost got me.
I think at this point, if we ever do this call again, I'd love to hear what Benji has to say, because I've heard your perspective, and I'd want to see what advice a growing young man has.
Ask a 20-year-old.
Well, and we actually
bring our boys in.
we want to have them on.
You want rabbit holes and whatever, shiny objects, bring in my boys.
So before this whiskey it makes me cough my ass off. Anything else before we kick out of this wave, gentlemen?
Well, one thing I tried to come into this call without having any preconceived notions of purpose, but I will say, you okay, Christopher?
Yeah, I'm fine.
I will say I might live in a bubble. I'm here in Santa Cruz, and it's a beautiful coastal California community, and I grew up in Irvine, California. But I will have to give credit to, I obviously have the highest respect for John and Ben, how they've raised their boys, but I really don't think I need that much credit. I think there's a lot of hope out there that I think I might live in a bubble, but especially when I hear the stats of only 25% of normal or traditional households, but there's a lot of great dads out there. I mean, at least in Santa Cruz, between my friends and my clients and the friends I grew up with, I can't think of one deadbeat dad that I know, whether they're, a traditional family or they're the weekend dad or whatever. I don't even know really too many weekend dads. Most of them nowadays alternate weeks or whatever they do. But I personally think maybe it's in my little bubble and maybe not in society as large, but there's a big cultural shift. Like all the dads on my son's t-ball team, they're all there. And it's a pretty big mix from my guess of socioeconomic status, but I think there's pretty good hope. There's a lot of kick-ass dads out there that are fully engaged and
for sure.
That I know I'm probably in a bubble, but I know that's the only thing I wanted to add. That
you're not.
I don't think I deserve that much credit. There's a lot of kick-ass dads out there.
You're not, and I would echo that by saying thank you, Christopher, for creating a forum for us to talk about what it means to be a healthy dad, because the world needs more people talking about healthy dads. Healthy dads need a community, because there just isn't enough discussion. There's a shortage of a forum around what it means to be quality in the forum of parenting your child. And it's probably the most important job that we have, to help our kids be better in the world. And what you've done here today is a wonderful thing. And thank you so much for giving us a chance to share a few words on what it has meant to us. And that's it.
And me, I'm just sorry we don't have any daughters represented here.
I know.
I would love to hear the dad perspective on daughters. Because that's
and we need to get that, and we will. But I really wanted to start with you guys, because of our relationship amongst the four of us. That was my primary motivator. But when I sort of realized, I was like, oh, yeah, the three of you have guys. You're all, and of late, I've become really obsessed with this question, what the fuck is wrong with men? And when you start to dig into the data, and Mike, I love your comment, and I think it's true. And to some degree, maybe we do live in somewhat of a bubble. But on the other hand, I think it would be fair to say that men are engaged in being dads in a way that today that they never were. You never saw dudes walking around with fucking babies strapped to their fucking chests 25 years ago. Like you never saw shit like that. So dads today, have come a long way. And we need more good dads, and we need more good men as a culture, as a society. And so the thank you I want to say to you guys is just thanks for being awesome guys, and thanks for being awesome dads.
Thanks, guys. Thank you. It's been time with you.
Thank you so much, guys. Well, I hope you loved that dialogue as much as I did. If you know somebody who would appreciate sitting in with Mike, John, and Ben, why not share this episode with them right now? And we would love you just a little bit extra. If you shared this episode on social media, we have noticed of late there's been a really big uptick in the number of folks sharing Legends and Losers in a public way. And we can't thank you enough for that. Thank you. All right. We would also like to thank HarperCollins Instant Classic, Play Bigger, How Pirates, Dreamers, and Innovators Create and Dominate Markets. Why don't you pick up a couple hundred copies wherever you buy legendary books? Equity Directory, the invite-only network of entrepreneurs and startup talent exchanging work for equity. Check out equitydirectory.com. One Life Fully Lived, dream, plan, and live your best life. We're the nonprofit trying to help make a difference. Check us out at onelifefullylived.org. The Mike Bloch Real Estate Team in Santa Cruz, California. If you're looking to move to Santa Cruz or maybe have a vacation home here, check out MikeBloch.com. Our good friends at Verve Coffee, the official coffee of Legends and Losers. Put some Santa Cruz craft coffee in your cup. Say that 10 times fast. Today, it's my favorite coffee, and I know you will love it too. Our good friends at John's Crazy Socks, the official sock provider to Legends and Losers. Check out johnscrazysocks.com. The amazing book from our friend and multi-time guest, Bill Walton. The book's called Back from the Dead. Check it out wherever you get legendary books. And the nonprofit trying to make a difference for small entrepreneurs in the developing world. Check out a difference. Check out kiva.org. You can make a difference with micro lending at kiva.org for loans that change lives. All right, we would like to remind you that today's information is provided to you solely for informational purposes, and this oddcast is the sole property of the Legends and Losers Oddcast Network, and we would love you a little extra if you shared it right now on social media. Now, Legends and Losers may contain forward-looking statements, backward-looking statements, and completely asinine-looking statements. Remember, future results could differ materially. Teach boys to be good men. Listen to Neil Young. Never jog near a prison. Only buy pasture-raised, free-range eggs. Introduce two people you love to two podcasts you love. Help them get set up. For new people getting into podcasting, it actually can be a bit of a pain. So if you help them with their smartphone, their tablet, whatever they want to do it on, that would be great. Thank you so much, Dandy Candy. I love you, Mom and Dad. And hey, Colin, this oddcast really ties the room together, doesn't it? Today, our deepest apologies go out to Marcus Rust, owner and chief executive of Rose Acre Farms. Sorry, Marcus, we just ran out of time for you. That's it, my friends. Thank you so much for investing your life with us. We really appreciate it, and we look forward to seeing you again on Legends and Losers.